The devastating human toll of the conflict in Ukraine continues to mount, with official estimates indicating a grim tally of civilian casualties since Russia's full-scale invasion began in February 2022. By early 2026, the United Nations Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, OHCHR, reported over 10,500 civilians killed and more than 20,000 injured across the country, though the actual figures are likely far higher. These tragic numbers stem from relentless indiscriminate shelling, missile attacks, and ground combat in densely populated areas like Kharkiv, Donetsk, and Zaporizhia. The ongoing violence has not only led to immense loss of life but has also displaced millions and obliterated critical civilian infrastructure. International human rights organizations are consistently condemning these widespread violations of international humanitarian law, demanding accountability for potential war crimes. This profound suffering underscores the catastrophic and enduring impact of the conflict on the Ukrainian population. Ukrainian forces are increasingly employing mid-range strike capabilities to inflict significant damage on Russia's military infrastructure, dealing a double blow to Moscow's war effort. Recent precision attacks have targeted vital logistical hubs, command centers, and airfields deep within Russian-occupied territories and potentially even across the border into Russia. The effective deployment of Western-supplied missile systems, such as ATACMS and Storm Shadow, has disrupted critical supply lines and degraded Russia's ability to resupply its frontline troops. This strategy aims to deplete Russian ammunition stockpiles and fuel reserves, diminishing their offensive capacity along the eastern and southern fronts. Ukrainian military officials state these strikes are crucial for leveling the playing field against Russia's quantitative advantage. These targeted operations are significantly altering battlefield dynamics and intensifying pressure on Russian military planning. The concept of hybrid warfare has evolved significantly by 2026, now representing a complex and pervasive threat that blurs the traditional lines between peace and armed conflict. This contemporary form of aggression, exemplified by Russia's actions in Ukraine, integrates conventional military pressure with sophisticated non-military tactics. These include large-scale cyber attacks targeting critical infrastructure, extensive disinformation campaigns designed to destabilize societies, economic coercion, and the strategic deployment of proxy forces. Defense IQ analysts highlight how these multifaceted approaches aim to achieve political objectives without triggering a conventional military response, challenging existing international laws and defense doctrines. Nations are grappling with developing comprehensive strategies to counter these covert and overt threats, making hybrid warfare a central concern for global security in the coming decade. As Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine enters its fifth year, the sheer scale of the conflict is starkly revealed through devastating statistics. Since February 2022, Ukrainian authorities estimate tens of thousands of military personnel have been killed on both sides, alongside over 10,500 confirmed civilian deaths, though actual figures are considerably higher. The war has forced more than 6.5 million Ukrainians to seek refuge abroad and internally displaced another 3.7 million people, creating Europe's largest refugee crisis since World War II. Economically, Ukraine has suffered hundreds of billions of dollars in infrastructure damage, while Western nations have provided over $250 billion in military, financial, and humanitarian aid. These numbers paint a grim picture of the immense human suffering and geopolitical upheaval caused by the prolonged conflict. The conflict in Ukraine, escalating from Russia's full-scale invasion in February 2022, stems from a confluence of historical grievances, geopolitical ambitions, and perceived security threats. Moscow's stated aims of a denazification and a demilitarization mask deeper concerns over NATO expansion and President Putin's vision of restoring Russia's sphere of influence in Eastern Europe. The war has triggered profound global consequences, including a severe humanitarian crisis with millions displaced, a significant disruption to global energy and food markets, and a re-energized NATO alliance. Furthermore, it has fundamentally reshaped the international order, intensifying geopolitical rivalries and prompting a widespread rearmament across Europe. Understanding these complex causes and far-reaching effects is crucial for navigating the evolving landscape of international relations. The week of March 14 to 20, 2026, saw continued intense fighting across key sectors of the Ukrainian front lines, with Russian forces maintaining pressure in the eastern Donbass region. Heavy artillery duels and localized ground assaults were reported near Avdiivka and Bakhmut, where Ukrainian defenders held their positions despite persistent Russian efforts to advance. Meanwhile, in the Kharkiv Oblast, Ukrainian forces launched counter-battery fire in response to increased Russian shelling of civilian areas, causing further infrastructure damage. Humanitarian organizations reported disruptions to aid deliveries in frontline communities due to ongoing hostilities and damaged roads. The sustained combat highlights the entrenched nature of the conflict and the continued daily struggle for control over strategic territories. The question of a viable conflict-ending solution in Ukraine remains highly complex, with analysts from the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace suggesting significant obstacles persist. Both Kiev and Moscow currently maintain maximalist demands, with Ukraine insisting on full territorial integrity and Russia demanding recognition of its annexed regions, creating a substantial diplomatic deadlock. Trust between the warring parties is virtually non-existent, complicating any potential ceasefire or negotiation efforts, while international mediation has yielded limited progress. Experts debate whether a frozen conflict, a negotiated settlement involving territorial concessions, or a decisive military outcome is the most likely path forward. The absence of a clear diplomatic off-ramp means the conflict is likely to continue, with immense human and economic costs for all involved. Ukraine's strategic position as a historical and geopolitical crossroads between Europe and Russia has fundamentally shaped the ongoing conflict. Situated on vital trade routes and acting as a buffer state, Ukraine's alignment has long been a flashpoint for major power competition, particularly concerning access to the Black Sea and energy transit corridors. Russia views Ukraine's aspirations for closer ties with NATO and the European Union as an existential threat to its own security sphere. This deep-seated geopolitical tension, stretching back centuries, underpins Moscow's determination to prevent Ukraine's full integration into Western alliances. The outcome of the current war will therefore profoundly determine the future security architecture of Europe and Russia's role on the global stage. The BBC has confirmed the deaths of several Cameroonian military contractors fighting for Russia in Ukraine, based on a leaked internal message. These individuals, reportedly recruited through clandestine channels, were deployed to active combat zones and perished during recent engagements. This revelation underscores Russia's increasing reliance on foreign fighters and mercenary groups to augment its forces amidst heavy casualties. Human rights organizations are raising serious concerns about the recruitment practices and the legality of deploying non-state combatants from developing nations to a foreign war. The confirmed deaths highlight the global reach of the conflict and the ethical dilemmas surrounding the use of foreign nationals in such roles, sparking calls for greater transparency and accountability regarding these arrangements. Russian forces have initiated a new offensive in eastern Ukraine, intensifying ground assaults and artillery barrages across several key frontline sectors, including areas near Avdiivka and Chasiv Yar. This renewed push comes as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky publicly voiced concerns about the potential impact of the escalating conflict in Iran on international aid to Ukraine. President Zelensky warned that any diversion of global attention and military resources to the Middle East could severely undermine vital Western support for Kiev's defense efforts. The ongoing Russian offensive aims to exploit any perceived weaknesses or delays in Western assistance, placing increased pressure on Ukrainian forces. This dual challenge of intensified fighting and potential reduced support poses a critical test for Ukraine's resilience. Ukraine solemnly remembered its fallen heroes and civilians as the nation marked the second anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion, entering the fifth year of the brutal conflict. Commemorative ceremonies were held across the country, with President Volodymyr Zelensky attending a poignant event in Kiev, honoring the thousands of lives lost since February 24, 2022. The grim milestone served as a powerful reminder of the immense human cost, with official figures reporting tens of thousands of military and civilian casualties. Public mourning and displays of national resilience underscored the unwavering determination of the Ukrainian people to defend their sovereignty. The anniversary reinforced calls for continued international support and justice for the victims of the ongoing aggression. The origins of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022 are rooted in President Vladimir Putin's complex mix of historical grievances, perceived security threats, and imperial ambitions. Putin cited concerns over NATO expansion and the protection of Russian speakers as justifications, alongside a broader desire to restore Russia's geopolitical influence and prevent Ukraine's integration with the West. As the conflict grinds on, potential pathways for its conclusion remain highly uncertain. Experts suggest possibilities ranging from a negotiated settlement, a protracted frozen conflict, or a decisive military outcome for either side. The ultimate resolution will depend on battlefield realities, domestic political pressures in both nations, and the sustained commitment of international diplomatic and military support. During his previous administration, then-President Donald Trump moved to strip job protections from an estimated 8,000 federal workers, a policy that continues to spark debate and concern among civil service advocates. Through an executive order known as Schedule F, issued in October 2020, Trump sought to reclassify certain policymaking positions, making it easier to hire and fire career employees without due process. Proponents argued this would increase accountability and allow for more politically aligned implementation of presidential agendas. However, critics, including unions and good governance groups, warned it risked politicizing the nonpartisan federal bureaucracy and undermining institutional expertise. This action underscored a broader effort to reshape the federal workforce, with significant implications for government stability and effectiveness. Armed clashes erupted in Somalia's capital, Mogadishu, today, ahead of a planned anti-government demonstration, plunging parts of the city into chaos. Heavy gunfire and explosions were reported in several districts as security forces confronted opposition supporters and allied militias, resulting in at least 3 fatalities and numerous injuries. The violence underscores deep political tensions and widespread public frustration with President Hassan Sheikh Mohammed's administration, particularly concerning security failures and delayed elections. Opposition leaders had called for the protest to demand greater accountability and governance reforms, but the confrontation risked further destabilizing the fragile nation. These clashes highlight the precarious security situation and the ongoing challenges to establishing lasting peace and political stability in Somalia. A recent nationwide poll conducted by the Brennan Center for Justice reveals a strong and bipartisan demand among American voters for concrete solutions to government corruption. The survey found that over 80% of respondents believe addressing corruption should be a top priority for elected officials, with concerns spanning issues like campaign finance, lobbying influence, and ethical breaches by public servants. This widespread sentiment reflects growing public distrust in political institutions and a desire for greater transparency and accountability. Voters across the political spectrum expressed frustration with the perceived lack of action on these issues, indicating that anti-corruption measures will likely be a significant factor in upcoming elections. The findings underscore a critical challenge for policymakers seeking to restore public confidence in democratic processes.